She moves through life like a storm, untamed, unpredictable, and utterly free. The Sigma female, a woman who thrives in solitude, answers to no one, and defies every rule society tries to box her into. But when it comes to love, the world doubts her. Can a lone wolf ever let someone in? Whispers follow her. Too independent. Too guarded. Too much. Yet beneath that self-reliant exterior beats a heart that craves depth, not drama, a connection that doesn't demand she dim her light. But here's the truth they don't tell you. Sigma women don't settle for love that chains. They seek partnerships that liberate. So can she find her match? The answer isn't in compromising her wildness. It's in rewriting the rules. In this video, we're tearing apart the myth that Sigma females are destined to be alone. Because love, for her, isn't about finding a missing piece. It's about choosing someone worthy of her already complete universe. Let's begin. 1. Respects boundaries. The fear of losing independence, encapsulated in the poignant question, "Will a relationship clip my wings?" strikes at the heart of the Sigma female's existential dilemma when contemplating love. For the Sigma woman, independence is not merely a preference, but a cornerstone of her identity, a hard-won autonomy that defines her ability to thrive without external validation or reliance. This fear arises from the tension between her innate self-sufficiency and the societal and interpersonal expectations inherent in romantic relationships, which often demand compromise, shared decision-making, and emotional interdependence. Sigma females who prioritize solitude and personal agency perceive relationships as potential threats to their freedom, fearing that partnership might force them to dilute their individuality or conform to roles that clash with their non-conformist ethos. This anxiety is compounded by societal narratives that equate love with sacrifice, particularly for women, who are traditionally expected to prioritize relational harmony over personal ambitions. The Sigma female's resistance to these norms is not a rejection of connection, but a protective mechanism. Her guardedness stems from past experiences where independence was undervalued, or partners mistook her self-reliance for emotional aloofness. Yet this fear also reflects a deeper existential concern: the preservation of identity. To a Sigma, losing autonomy feels akin to erasing the essence of who she is, a woman who navigates the world on her own terms. However, this apprehension does not preclude the possibility of love. Instead, it underscores the need for a relationship dynamic that honors her sovereignty. The Sigma female's ideal partner is someone who views her independence not as a challenge to overcome, but as a trait to admire, a secure individual who fosters mutual growth without encroaching on her solitude. By setting clear boundaries, prioritizing communication, and seeking partners who embody their own self-sufficiency, Sigma women can reframe relationships as alliances of equals rather than cages. In this light, love becomes not a threat to her wings, but a wind beneath them, allowing her to soar while sharing the sky with someone who respects the sanctity of her flight. 2. Trust issues. The pervasive myth that Sigma females are inherently lonely or antisocial stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of their relationship with solitude, a confusion between isolation and intentional aloneness. Unlike loneliness, which is marked by a painful sense of disconnection, or antisocial behavior rooted in hostility toward social norms, the Sigma female's solitude is a deliberate, empowering act of self-preservation and creativity. Society often conflates independence with emotional deficiency, assuming that those who thrive alone must be missing something or nursing hidden insecurities. But for the Sigma woman, solitude is neither a coping mechanism nor a rejection of humanity. It is a sacred space where she recalibrates her energy, hones her vision, and cultivates the mental clarity required to navigate a world saturated with noise and performative sociality. Her alone time is not a void to fill, but a canvas to create, whether that's through art, strategic planning, or deep introspection. This distinction is critical. while the antisocial individual withdraws out of disdain for social bonds, and the lonely person yearns for connection they lack. The Sigma female curates her social world with precision, engaging only when it aligns with her values or fuels her growth. She is not opposed to relationships. She is opposed to obligation. Her solitude is a rebellion against the societal script that equates a woman's worth with her availability to others. A script that demands she prioritize caretaking, constant connectivity, and communal harmony over her own sovereignty. Far from being antisocial, Sigma women often possess sharp emotional intelligence and can forge profound connections. But these bonds are reserved for those who respect her boundaries and match her depth. The Sigma's loneliness is, in reality, a mislabeled superpower. Her ability to detach from superficial interactions allows her to conserve energy for endeavors that matter, whether that's building a business, mastering a skill, or nurturing a small circle of trusted allies. In a culture that pathologizes solitude, especially in women, as a failure to conform, the Sigma Sisterhood reclaims it as an act of defiance and self-love. Their choice to recharge alone isn't a weakness. It's the quiet engine of their resilience, enabling them to return to the world not drained by its demands, but fortified by their own inner resolve. Third, societal pressure. The societal pressure encapsulated in the loaded question, "Why aren't you married?" reflects a deep-rooted cultural script that equates a woman's value with her marital status, a narrative Sigma females confront as both a personal and political battleground. For centuries, marriage has been framed as the ultimate fulfillment for women, a societal milestone that confers legitimacy, stability, and social approval. Yet for the Sigma female, whose identity is anchored in autonomy and nonconformity, this expectation clashes violently with her ethos. The pressure manifests as a constant undercurrent of judgment, from well-meaning relatives who equate her singlehood with wasted potential, to cultural tropes that paint unmarried women as incomplete or rebellious. This interrogation is not merely about romance, it's a proxy for broader anxieties about women who refuse to center their lives around traditional roles. Sigma women, however, reject the premise that marriage is a mandatory rite of passage. Their resistance is not a dismissal of love, but a refusal to let patriarchal norms dictate their timeline or define their worth. The question, "Why aren't you married?" implies a flaw, an assumption that her independence is a temporary state, a phase to outgrow. But for the Sigma, solitude is intentional, a space where she cultivates self-reliance and pursues ambitions unburdened by compromise. Navigating this pressure requires a delicate balance of defiance and diplomacy. She must assert her right to exist on her own terms, while weathering accusations of being too picky, selfish, or intimidating. Internally, the challenge lies in resisting the internalization of these judgments, the subtle voice that whispers, "Maybe they're right." Sigma females often face a dual burden, justifying their choices in a world that pathologizes unmarried women, while also confronting the loneliness of forging a path less traveled. Yet their strength emerges in reframing the narrative. They redefine marriage not as an obligation, but as a choice, one that must align with their non-negotiable need for freedom. For some, this means rejecting marriage entirely. For others, it means entering partnerships that honor their autonomy, where legal or social bonds don't equate to ownership. The Sigma's authenticity shines in her refusal to perform compliance. She challenges the notion that a woman's life must be validated by a ring or a shared surname, asserting instead that her worth is inherent, her legacy built on achievements and self-mastery. In a world that still measures female success by relational milestones, the Sigma Sisterhood dares to prioritize self-possession over societal possession, proving that fulfillment isn't found in fitting in, but in the courage to stand alone, unapologetically, until a partnership worthy of her sovereignty arrives. 4. Communication styles. Directness, mistaken for coldness, need for deep, meaningful connection. The Sigma female's communication style, marked by unflinching directness and a disdain for superficiality, often collides with societal expectations of how women should express themselves, leading to misinterpretations of her intent as coldness or emotional detachment. Unlike the performative warmth or indirect diplomacy expected in traditional femininity, the Sigma woman prioritizes clarity and efficiency in her interactions, valuing honesty over placation. This candor, however, is frequently misread as harshness, particularly in cultures that equate femininity with nurturance, subtlety, and the suppression of assertiveness. Her refusal to soften her language with qualifiers, maybe, just, or cushion critiques with empty praise can unsettle those accustomed to social niceties, leaving them to mistake her brevity for indifference. Yet this directness is not a rejection of emotion, but a reflection of her integrity. She respects others, and herself, too much to engage in disingenuous dialogue. Beneath this straightforward exterior lies a profound craving for depth, a desire to bypass trivial chatter in favor of conversations that spark intellectual or emotional resonance. For the Sigma, small talk isn't merely tedious. It feels like a betrayal of her authenticity, a waste of energy better spent exploring ideas, passions, or vulnerabilities. This dichotomy, direct yet deeply feeling, creates a paradox in her relationships. While she seeks raw, unfiltered connection, her communication style can inadvertently erect barriers with those who conflate her bluntness with a lack of care. In romantic contexts, this tension intensifies. Partners may interpret her reluctance to engage in constant contact or performative affection as disinterest, failing to recognize that her love language is rooted in loyalty, action, and quiet devotion, rather than grand gestures or incessant validation. The Sigma's need for meaningful connection also extends to conflict resolution. She prefers addressing issues head-on, dissecting problems with logic, while others may perceive this approach as clinical or unempathetic. Yet her aversion to emotional games or manipulative tactics stems from a commitment to transparency, a belief that trust is built through consistency, not theatrics. To thrive in relationships, Sigma women must navigate a delicate balance, preserving their authentic voice while cultivating patience for those who require more overt emotional signaling. Likewise, their ideal partner is one who decodes her directness, not as coldness, but as respect. A person who values substance over superficial harmony and understands that her silence is not emptiness, but depth waiting to be explored. In a world that often mistakes brevity for brutality and depth for intensity, the Sigma female's communication style becomes both her shield and her bridge, a way to filter out those unworthy of her truth while drawing closer to kindred spirits who speak her language of raw, unfiltered connection. 5. Respects boundaries. Someone who understands her need for space without taking it personally. For the Sigma female, boundaries are not negotiable niceties but the bedrock of her emotional and psychological well-being, a non-negotiable framework that safeguards her autonomy in a world often hostile to women who refuse to be always available. Her need for space is neither a rejection of connection nor a passive-aggressive tactic. It is an existential requirement, akin to oxygen for her fiercely independent spirit. A partner who respects these boundaries understands that her solitude is not a withdrawal from the relationship, but a sacred ritual of self-renewal, a time to recalibrate her energy and nurture the creative or intellectual pursuits that define her identity. This understanding requires emotional maturity and security, as it demands resisting the societal conditioning that equates love with constant proximity, the toxic belief that, if you love me, you'll need me. For the Sigma, a partner's ability to honor her need for solitude without interpreting it as indifference or betrayal is the ultimate litmus test of compatibility. Such a partner recognizes that her independence is not a threat, but a testament to her strength, and that granting her space is not an act of neglect but one of profound respect. They avoid the pitfall of conflating physical or emotional distance with relational failure, instead viewing her moments of retreat as opportunities for mutual growth, trusting that she will return with renewed clarity and depth to offer the relationship. Crucially, this respect for boundaries is reciprocal. The Sigma female equally values a partner's autonomy, fostering a dynamic where both individuals thrive as sovereign beings rather than enmeshed halves. Challenges arise when insecurities surface, when a partner misreads her solitude as secrecy or emotional withholding, projecting their own fears of abandonment onto her self-sufficiency. Here, communication becomes vital. The Sigma must articulate her needs unapologetically. I need time to recharge, and it's not about you. While the partner must cultivate the self-awareness to distinguish her boundaries from personal rejection. In practice, this might manifest as designated alone days, separate hobbies, or silent companionship, where presence is felt without the pressure of performance. The Sigma's ideal partner grasps that her boundaries are not walls, but bridges to a deeper connection, one built on trust rather than control. By honoring her space, they prove themselves capable of loving her, not in spite of her independence, but because of it, creating a relationship where freedom and intimacy coexist without contradiction. In a culture that romanticizes clinginess as devotion, the Sigma Sisterhood redefines love as the courage to let someone breathe. Knowing that true connection flourishes not in the suffocation of closeness, but in the spaciousness of mutual respect. 6. Equally self-sufficient. A partner with their own passions, no codependency. For the Sigma female, a relationship thrives not through fusion, but through the harmonious coexistence of two autonomous individuals, each anchored in their own purpose, passions, and self-reliance. The concept of codependency, with its roots in emotional enmeshment and mutual neediness, is anathema to her ethos. She seeks a partner whose identity is not contingent on the relationship, but flourishes independently alongside it. This self-sufficiency is not mere independence in routine tasks, but a profound alignment with one's own ambitions, creative drives, and inner fulfillment. A partner who, like her, views solitude as fertile ground for growth rather than a void to be filled by another. Such a dynamic dismantles the toxic myth that love requires losing oneself in the other, instead framing partnership as a collaboration of whole beings who choose to share their worlds without demanding ownership. The Sigma woman's aversion to codependency stems from her intrinsic need to preserve agency. She recoils from relationships that demand constant emotional labor, performative togetherness, or the suppression of her goals to accommodate a partner's insecurities. An equally self-sufficient partner, however, understands that their individual pursuits, whether artistic, intellectual, or professional, are not distractions from the relationship, but vital threads in its tapestry, enriching the bond through shared curiosity and mutual admiration. This balance prevents the suffocation of clinginess or the resentment of unmet expectations, as both parties prioritize self-actualization over sacrificial compromise. Crucially, this self-sufficiency fosters trust. When neither partner relies on the other for validation or purpose, there is no fear of abandonment, only a secure appreciation for the space that allows each to evolve. Challenges emerge only when societal norms conflate separation with detachment, mislabeling their autonomy as emotional distance. Yet for the Sigma, a partner's passion projects or solo endeavors are not threats but affirmations of their compatibility, proof that they value growth as deeply as she does. In practice, this might look like parallel creative sessions in shared silence, supporting each other's solo travels, or celebrating achievements without envy. The Sigma's ideal match recognizes that codependency stifles the very traits that drew them together: her independence, ambition, and untamed spirit. By championing self-sufficiency, they build a relationship where love is not a cage, but a catalyst, empowering both to soar higher individually while crafting a shared narrative rooted in freedom, respect, and the quiet confidence that their bond is strongest when neither clings. 7. Emotional depth, values. Intellectual conversations over superficial charm. For the Sigma female, emotional depth is not a preference but a non-negotiable pillar of connection, a magnetic pull toward conversations that ignite her mind, challenge her perspectives, and resonate with her core values. Superficial charm, with its polished small talk and performative charisma, strikes her as hollow, a fleeting dance of pleasantries that fails to penetrate the surface of who she truly is. This aversion to triviality stems from her innate desire for authenticity. She craves interactions that transcend the mundane, where vulnerability and intellect intertwine to create bonds rooted in mutual growth rather than social convenience. To the Sigma, a partner's ability to engage in debates about philosophy, dissect societal structures, or confess unspoken fears under moonlight is far more seductive than empty compliments or rehearsed flirtations. Her definition of emotional depth isn't merely about serious topics. It's about substance, the willingness to explore the raw, unfiltered layers of human experience without flinching. This prioritization of intellectual rigor over charm reflects her disdain for societal scripts that equate femininity with passive agreeability. She refuses to shrink her curiosity or feign ignorance to stroke a partner's ego. Instead, she seeks someone who views her mind as an equal battlefield of ideas, where sparring over ethics or art becomes foreplay for the soul. Superficial interactions, by contrast, feel like emotional starvation, a waste of time better spent alone. This standard, however, is often misunderstood. Partners who rely on charisma or light-hearted banter may interpret her intensity as criticism, unaware that her hunger for depth is not judgment, but an invitation to transcend mediocrity. For the Sigma, a relationship without intellectual synergy is a gilded cage, no matter how charming the jailer. Her ideal partner recognizes that her love language is woven through midnight debates, shared silence over a book, or the unspoken understanding that arises when two people dare to bare their minds. This dynamic also safeguards her autonomy. A partner who values depth respects her need to retreat into her intellectual pursuits, knowing these solitary journeys fuel the richness she brings back to the relationship. In a world obsessed with surface-level validation, the Sigma female's insistence on emotional depth acts as both a filter and a rebellion, a refusal to settle for love that dazzles but doesn't see her, and a testament to her belief that true intimacy is forged not in laughter-filled rooms, but in the quiet, daring spaces where minds and souls collide. 8. Compatible types: introverted alphas, other Sigmas, or secure partners who admire her strength. The Sigma female's compatibility hinges on finding partners who not only respect her autonomy, but celebrate it. Individuals whose own identities are robust enough to coexist with her fierce independence without triggering power struggles or insecurity. Introverted alphas emerge as ideal matches, blending the alpha's innate leadership and competence with a reserved, non-domineering demeanor. Unlike traditional alphas who thrive on social dominance, the introverted alpha shares the Sigma's disdain for performative hierarchies, preferring to lead through quiet influence rather than overt control. This pairing works because both value self-reliance and mutual respect. The Sigma admires the introverted alpha's capability without feeling overshadowed, while the alpha respects her need for solitude, recognizing that her independence amplifies rather than threatens their bond. Other Sigmas, meanwhile, offer a mirror of understanding, a relationship built on unspoken rhythms where both partners prioritize depth, autonomy, and intellectual synergy. Two Sigmas create a dynamic of parallel growth, where solitude is shared but not invaded. They thrive in silent companionship, pursuing separate passions under the same roof, their connection rooted in mutual trust rather than constant interaction. This pairing avoids the pitfalls of codependency, as neither seeks to complete the other. But their shared detachment can sometimes risk emotional distance if both prioritize independence over vulnerability. The third compatible type, secure, self-possessed partners, encompasses those outside the Alpha-Sigma spectrum, but who possess unwavering self-assurance and emotional maturity. These individuals admire the Sigma's strength without fetishizing or fearing it, viewing her independence as an asset rather than a challenge to their ego. Secure partners often have their own rich inner lives, artists, thinkers, or adventurers, who value the Sigma's complexity and grant her space without interpreting it as rejection. They engage her intellectually, match her depth, and derive joy from her autonomy, understanding that her occasional withdrawal is not a lack of love, but a reaffirmation of self. Common to all three types is an absence of neediness. They do not seek to fix her solitude or mold her into conventional roles. Challenges may arise. Introverted alphas might occasionally clash with her non-conformity. Other sigmas may struggle with emotional expressiveness, and secure partners must continually reaffirm their commitment to growth. But these relationships succeed when grounded in mutual admiration for each other's sovereignty. Ultimately, the Sigma female's ideal partners are those who see her not as a puzzle to solve or a trophy to win, but as a force of nature to stand beside. Their love a testament to the belief that two wholes can create something greater than the sum of their parts without ever surrendering their wild, untamed cores. The Sigma female's journey in love is not a quest to be tamed or completed, but a defiant reclamation of what relationships could be when stripped of societal scripts and suffocating norms. Her independence, often misread as a barrier to intimacy, is in fact her greatest strength, a litmus test that filters out those unworthy of her depth and reserves her energy for connections that amplify, rather than diminish, her sovereignty. The right partner for a Sigma is not someone who seeks to shrink her world, but one who expands it. A fellow traveler who admires her storm-like spirit, champions her solitude, and matches her intellectual ferocity. Love, for her, is not about losing herself in another, but choosing someone who sees her autonomy as the foundation of a bond built on trust, respect, and mutual evolution. To the Sigma Sisterhood, this is the ultimate rebellion. Proof that a woman can be both fiercely independent and deeply connected, that solitude and love are not opposites but allies in crafting a life of authenticity. The lone wolf doesn't need a pack to thrive. But when she finds a partner who runs beside her, neither clipping her wings nor drowning her fire, she discovers that even storms can dance in harmony,